"You cannot do this to me, Sarah. I am your sister," Tiffany screamed as the deputy tightened the zip ties around her wrists. Her designer mascara ran down her face like black tears. My mother Linda stood frozen next to my father Gary, holding the eviction notice I had just handed them. Their faces were pale, drained of the arrogance they had worn just an hour ago. I stood there calm and composed, clutching the key fob to a brand new Volvo in my pocket. I watched the people who had tormented me for decades finally face the consequences of their own greed. They thought they could destroy my daughter to save their golden child. They were wrong. 3 days earlier, my life was quiet. My name is Sarah, and I am 34 years old. To my family, I am just a boring accountant who pays their bills. They have no idea I am a CPA with a net worth of over $2 million carefully invested from my late husband's life insurance and my own firm's success. I keep my wealth hidden to protect myself from their entitlement. My world revolves around my 16-year-old daughter, Maya. She is a good kid, straight A student who just got her license. The shiny Toyota 4Runner in our driveway was not just a car. It was the last gift her father left her bought with the trust fund he set up before he died. The Uber driver slowed down as we turned onto my street, and I felt my stomach drop. Blue and red lights flashed against the dark suburban sky, bouncing off the manicured lawns of my neighbors. I leaned forward, gripping the leather seat of the car. My 16-year-old daughter, Maya, was sitting next to me, scrolling on her phone, completely unaware that our world was about to shatter. We had just spent a week in Cabo, a reward for her straight A's, and a chance for me to breathe after a brutal tax season. I expected to come home to a quiet house and a pile of mail. Instead, I came home to a crime scene. The driver stopped 3 houses down. "Miss, I cannot go any further," he said. I threw the door open and ran. Maya followed close behind me, her suitcase rattling on the pavement. The air smelled of burnt rubber and gasoline. As I got closer, I saw it. My knees almost gave out. It was the Toyota 4Runner, the brand new $48,000 SUV I had bought for Maya just 2 weeks ago. It was wrapped around the massive oak tree in our front yard. The front hood was crumpled like a piece of paper. The windshield was shattered into 1,000 diamonds scattered across the grass. The airbags had deployed, hanging limp and deflated inside the cabin. This was not just a car. This was the last thing my late husband had provided for his daughter. We used the trust fund he set up before the cancer took him to buy it. It was supposed to be her safety, her freedom, her connection to him. Now it was a pile of scrap metal smoking in the driveway. I scanned the wreckage frantically. Maya was right beside me, safe and sound, so who was in the car? That was when I saw the paramedics lifting a stretcher into the back of an ambulance parked in my driveway. A woman was lying on it wearing a foam neck brace, wailing loud enough to wake the entire block. I recognized that dramatic cry instantly. It was my sister Tiffany. She was supposed to be house-sitting, watering the plants and bringing in the mail. She was absolutely not supposed to be driving the car. I ran toward the ambulance, my heart pounding in my throat. Tiffany spotted me and her wailing intensified. She reached out a hand, trembling theatrically. "Sarah, thank God you are here. I thought I was going to die." I stared at her. She was 30 years old, but she looked like a toddler caught with her hand in the cookie jar, except the jar was a $50,000 vehicle, and she had smashed it to pieces. There was no blood on her, just the neck brace, and a look of terrified desperation in her eyes. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drag her off that stretcher and ask her what she was thinking. But before I could say a word, a heavy hand landed on my shoulder. I turned around to find a sheriff deputy towering over me. He was not smiling. "Ma'am, are you the homeowner?" he asked. His voice was cold, professional, and accusing. "Yes, I am Sarah. This is my house. What happened?" The deputy did not answer me. He looked past me at Maya, who was standing near the mailbox. Her face pale, her eyes wide with terror as she looked at the wreckage of her birthday present. "Is that your daughter?" the deputy asked, pointing at Maya. "Yes, that is Maya. She is 16. Why?" Before the deputy could answer, Tiffany shrieked from the ambulance. "It was her, Sarah. It was Maya. She did this." I froze. The world seemed to stop spinning. "What are you talking about, Tiffany?" I asked, my voice shaking. Tiffany sat up on the stretcher, ignoring the paramedic trying to lay her back down. She pointed a shaking finger at my daughter. "Maya stole the keys, Sarah. I was asleep in the guest room and I heard the engine start. I ran out to stop her because I know she is not allowed to drive at night. I jumped in the passenger seat to try and pull the emergency brake, but she panicked. She stomped on the gas instead of the brake and drove us straight into the tree. She almost killed me, Sarah. She almost killed her own aunt." The lie was so massive, so audacious, that for a second I could not process it. I looked at Maya. My daughter stood there frozen in shock. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. She just shook her head slowly, tears welling up in her eyes. She looked small and terrified. The deputy turned his attention fully to Maya. He walked over to her, his hand resting near his belt. "Miss, I need you to step away from your mother," he said. "We need to ask you some questions about the unauthorized use of a motor vehicle and reckless endangerment." "No, wait," I stepped between them. "That is not true. Maya was with me. We just got dropped off by an Uber. We were in Mexico." Tiffany screamed again, cutting me off. "She is lying to protect herself, Sarah. She got home early. She took an earlier flight because she wanted to sneak out to see her boyfriend. Check the flight logs. Check the house cameras. Oh wait, the cameras were off because the internet went down yesterday. How convenient, right?" My blood ran cold. The cameras. I had received a notification yesterday that the Wi-Fi was offline, but I assumed it was a standard outage. Tiffany had planned this. She had disabled the cameras. She had crashed the car. And now she was framing my child to save herself. "Maya, Dad's car," she whispered, finally finding her voice. "It is gone." She was not even listening to the accusation. She was mourning the loss of her father's gift. Her shock made her look guilty to the untrained eye. She looked detached, unresponsive. The deputy took Maya's arm. "Ma'am, please step back. We have a witness stating the juvenile stole the keys and operated the vehicle, resulting in a collision with injuries. This is a felony investigation." I watched helplessly as they led my 16-year-old daughter away from me toward the patrol car. They did not handcuff her yet, but they put her in the back seat like a criminal. Maya pressed her face against the glass, looking at me with eyes full of betrayal and fear. She did not understand why I was not stopping them. She did not understand that if I fought the police right now, they would arrest me too, and then there would be no one left to fight for her. I turned back to the ambulance. Tiffany was lying back down now, clutching her neck, sobbing softly. She peeked at me through her eyelashes. "I am so sorry, Sarah," she whimpered. I tried to stop her. I really did. But you know how wild she has been lately. Mom and Dad were right about her. She needs help. The rage that filled me was unlike anything I had ever felt. It was cold. It was sharp. It was calculating. I looked at my sister, the golden child who had never worked a day in her life, who had lived off my parents and then me for years. I looked at the wreckage of my husband's legacy, and I realized that the sister I thought I knew was dead. The woman in that ambulance was an enemy. I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply pulled out my phone and took a picture of Tiffany in the ambulance. Then I took a picture of the car. Then I walked over to the deputy. "I will meet you at the station," I said, my voice steady. "I am calling my lawyer, and I am not saying another word until he gets there." As the ambulance pulled away with sirens wailing, carrying my lying sister to the hospital, and the patrol car pulled away. With my terrified daughter, I stood alone in the driveway. The flashing lights faded into the distance, leaving me in the dark. I looked down at the crushed metal of the 4Runner. Something caught my eye. A small red light blinking inside the cabin amidst the deployed airbags. It was the dashcam, not the factory one, the aftermarket 360-degree camera I had installed 2 days before we left, because as a CPA, I document everything. It ran on an independent battery. It uploaded to a separate cloud server that did not rely on the home Wi-Fi. Tiffany had turned off the house cameras, but she had forgotten about the car. I walked over to the wreckage, my heels crunching on the broken glass. I reached through the shattered window and pulled the memory card out of the device. I held it in my palm tight enough to leave a mark. They wanted a story. They wanted a villain. I was about to give them one, but it was not going to be my daughter. A beige sedan screeched to a halt behind the patrol car, and my heart sank even further into the pit of my stomach. It was my parents, Linda and Gary. For a split second, a foolish part of me thought they were here to help. I thought they had seen the lights and rushed over to support their 16-year-old granddaughter, who was currently being treated like a criminal in her own front yard. I stepped forward, ready to explain, ready to have backup against Tiffany's insanity. But my mother did not even look at me. She did not look at Maya, who was shivering in the back of the police cruiser. She ran straight past us, her heels clicking frantically on the asphalt toward the ambulance. "Oh, my poor baby," she wailed, reaching for Tiffany. My father followed close behind, casting a look of deep disappointment in my direction, before turning his attention to the woman in the neck brace. "Mom," I said, my voice cracking. "Mom, they put Maya in the police car. They think she stole the car. You have to tell them Tiffany is lying. You know Tiffany. You know she does this." Linda spun around. Her face was twisted in a scowl that I had seen 1,000 times before, usually directed at me, but never with this much venom. "Keep your voice down, Sarah," she hissed. "Have you not done enough damage already? Look at your sister. Look at her. She is in pain. She is suffering because of your daughter." I stared at her, unable to comprehend the words coming out of her mouth. "My daughter, your granddaughter. She is sitting in a cage right now, Mom." "She did not do this. We just got home." "I knew it." Linda interrupted me, her voice rising to a shrill pitch that drew the attention of the neighbors gathering on their porches. "I knew something like this would happen. I told you that girl was getting out of control. You spoiled her, Sarah. You indulged her every whim with that fancy school and these expensive trips, and now look what happened. You bought a child a lethal weapon, and she almost killed my Tiffany." The injustice of it felt like a physical slap. Maya was an honor roll student. She volunteered at the animal shelter. She had never been in trouble a day in her life. Tiffany was the one with 2 DUIs and a credit score lower than her age. Gary stepped up beside Linda, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. He looked at the deputy. "Officer, I am the father of the victim. We have been having trouble with the teenager for months now. She is rebellious. She does not respect authority. We were afraid she might do something violent, but we never thought she would go this far." My mouth fell open. "Dad, what are you saying?" "That is a lie. You saw Maya last week. You said she was a sweet girl. Why are you doing this?" Gary refused to meet my eyes. He looked at the ground and then back at the deputy. "We just want to make sure our daughter presses charges. We cannot let family endanger family. There have to be consequences." The deputy nodded, taking notes. He looked at me with renewed suspicion. The testimony of the grandparents seemed to seal the deal. If the whole family was saying the kid was a problem, then the kid was probably a problem. He walked over to me, his face grim. "Ma'am, based on the witness statement from the victim and the corroborating character statements from the family, we are proceeding with charges. Your daughter is being placed under arrest for grand larceny auto and reckless endangerment. Because of the value of the vehicle and the injuries sustained by the victim, this is a felony charge." Felony. The word hung in the cold night air. Grand larceny auto, reckless endangerment. These were words that ruined lives. These were words that erased college scholarships and future careers. "Where are you taking her?" I demanded, stepping in front of him. "You cannot take a minor to jail without a parent present. She is being transported to the juvenile detention center downtown for processing," he said, moving around me. "You can meet us there, but you cannot ride with her. She is in custody now." I looked at the patrol car. Maya had her face pressed against the window. She was crying now, silent, terrified sobs that shook her small shoulders. She looked at her grandmother. "Grandma," she mouthed, "please." Linda saw her. I know she saw her. But she turned her back. She turned back to Tiffany and began stroking her hair, cooing soft words of comfort to the 30-year-old woman who had just framed a teenager. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I almost fell over, but I steadied myself. I had to be strong for Maya. I had to get to the station. I had to get my lawyer. As I turned to run to my own car to follow them, I saw him. David. He was standing in the shadows near the edge of the driveway behind my parents' sedan. He was wearing his pajamas and a coat he had thrown on in a hurry. He was a tall man, usually calm and composed, a stabilizing force in Tiffany's chaotic life, but tonight he looked like a ghost. He was not rushing to the ambulance to comfort his wife. He was not joining my parents in their condemnation of my daughter. He was just standing there, staring at the ground, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "David," I called out. He looked up. His eyes met mine, and for a second I saw it. I saw the guilt. It was heavy and dark, and it was eating him alive. He looked at the ambulance where his wife was putting on a performance worthy of an Oscar, and then he looked at the police car where my daughter was being taken away. He flinched. He knew. I did not know how much he knew. I did not know if he knew about the crash or just about Tiffany's lies, but he knew something was wrong. He knew Maya did not do this. "David, tell them," I pleaded. "Tell them Tiffany is lying. You know she is lying." David opened his mouth. He took a step forward, but then Gary turned around and glared at him. "David, we need you to ride in the ambulance with Tiffany," my father barked. "She needs her husband right now, not later. Now." David closed his mouth. He looked at me one last time, a look of pure apology and shame, and then he turned away. He walked toward the ambulance, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He climbed in the back without a word. I was alone. The sirens wailed as the ambulance pulled away. The police cruiser followed its red taillights, disappearing around the corner, taking my entire world with it. My parents got into their car, not even sparing me a second glance. They were following the golden child. I stood in the empty driveway, the smell of crushed radiator fluid and pine needles filling my nose. My phone felt heavy in my pocket. The dashcam memory card was burning a hole in my palm. They thought they had won. They thought they had successfully sacrificed my daughter to save their reputation. They thought I was just Sarah, the quiet accountant who paid the bills and fixed the problems. I walked to my garage and got into my old sedan. I wiped the tears from my face. They were done falling. I did not feel sad anymore. Sad. I felt cold. I started the engine. I was going to get my daughter out of jail, and then I was going to burn their entire world to the ground. The fluorescent lights of the Juvenile Justice Center hummed with a sound that felt like a drill boring directly into my skull. I sat on a hard plastic chair, bolted to the floor, my hands clasped tightly in my lap to stop them from shaking. It was 3 a.m. The air smelled of industrial cleaner and stale coffee, a scent that I knew would haunt my nightmares for years to come. Across from me, a woman was arguing with a police officer about her son, but her voice sounded distant, as if I were hearing it from underwater. My reality had narrowed down to a single metal door with a small, reinforced window. Behind that door was my daughter. I had not come alone. 20 minutes after the patrol car took Maya away, I had made a phone call that I knew would enrage my father if he found out. I called Michael Sterling. He was not a family friend. He was a shark. He was the most expensive criminal defense attorney in the county, a man who usually handled high-profile white-collar crimes or capital murder cases. I knew him from my professional network as a CPA. His retainer fee was $10,000 just to wake him up in the middle of the night. I transferred the money from my investment account without blinking. Michael sat beside me now, looking impeccable in a charcoal suit despite the hour. He was reviewing the preliminary police report on his tablet, his face unreadable. "They are charging her with grand larceny and felony reckless endangerment," he said, his voice low and calm. "The district attorney is going to push for this. Your family gave very damaging statements, Sarah. They are painting Maya as a troubled teen with a history of behavioral issues." I felt the bile rise in my throat. Maya was an honor student. She volunteered at the library. Her biggest rebellion was staying up late to read fantasy novels. My parents had turned her into a delinquent in the span of an hour just to protect Tiffany. The metal door buzzed and clicked open. I stood up so fast, my chair scraped loudly against the linoleum. A female officer stepped out, followed by Maya. My heart broke into 1,000 pieces. Maya was wearing her vacation clothes, a tie-dye shirt and shorts, but they looked wrong now. She was not wearing her shoes. They had taken her shoelaces. It was a standard suicide prevention protocol, but seeing my child shuffling in her socks, her hair messy and her face swollen from crying, was a level of pain I was not prepared for. She looked small. She looked broken. "Mom," she whispered. Her voice was raspy. I rushed forward and wrapped my arms around her. She collapsed against me, her body shaking with violent sobs. I held her tight, shielding her from the gaze of the officers and the other people in the waiting room. I could feel her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "I am here, baby," I whispered into her hair. "I am here. We are going home." The deputy from my driveway walked over holding a clipboard. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and condescension. "Mrs. Miller, you are being released into the custody of your mother, pending your arraignment hearing," he said, addressing Maya, but looking at me. "Your driver's license is hereby suspended immediately. You are not to operate a motor vehicle under any circumstances. If you violate this condition, your bail will be revoked, and you will be returned to custody until trial. Do you understand?" Maya nodded against my chest, unable to speak. The deputy handed me a plastic bag containing her shoelaces, her phone, and her wallet. "Keep a close eye on her," he said to me, his tone dropping to a lecture. "I have seen this before. Good kids go down bad paths when parents do not pay attention. Maybe this will be the wake-up call your family needs." I took the bag. I looked the deputy in the eye. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him that he was being played by a narcissist and two enablers. I wanted to tell him that he was ruining an innocent girl's life based on the word of a woman with 2 DUIs. But Michael Sterling stepped in front of me, his hand gently guiding me toward the exit. "Thank you," Deputy Michael said smoothly. "We will see you at the hearing. Come on, Sarah. Let us get her home." The walk to my car felt like a funeral procession. The night air was cold, biting through my thin jacket. I buckled Maya into the passenger seat of my old sedan, the car I used for errands, while the 4Runner had been her pride and joy. She did not say a word. She just stared out the window, her eyes vacant. I got in and started the engine. Michael tapped on my window. I rolled it down. "Do not let her talk to anyone, Sarah," he warned. "No texting her friends, no social media, and absolutely no contact with your sister or your parents. If they try to reach out, you call me. We are going to fight this, but it is going to be ugly. Your parents' witness statements are the biggest hurdle. They are establishing a pattern of conduct that does not exist." I nodded. "I know, Michael." "Thank you." I drove home in silence. The streets were empty, the suburban houses dark and peaceful. It felt unfair that the world could be so quiet when my life was screaming. I looked over at Maya every few seconds, checking to make sure she was still there, still breathing. She had curled into a ball, her knees pulled up to her chest. When we pulled into the driveway, the headlights swept over the massive oak tree. The bark was stripped away where the car had hit. There were deep gouges in the lawn. The wreckage had been towed, but the scars remained. Maya flinched when she saw the tree, turning her head away quickly. We went inside. The house felt different. It felt unsafe, as if the violation of my sister's betrayal had seeped into the walls. I locked the door and engaged the deadbolt. Then I set the alarm. It was a reflex, but tonight it felt necessary. Maya walked straight to her room. I followed her. She sat down on the edge of her bed, the bed with the fluffy duvet and the fairy lights she had hung up herself. It was a teenager's room, a sanctuary. But now she looked like a stranger in it. She looked up at me and the dam finally broke. "Mom, I did not do it," she wailed, the sound raw and guttural. "I swear to you I did not do it." I was asleep. I woke up because I heard the crash. I ran outside and Aunt Tiffany was screaming at me. "I never touched the keys, Mom. I promise." She grabbed my hands, her grip desperate. Her fingernails dug into my skin. "You have to believe me. Grandma and Grandpa said I did it. Why would they say that? Why would they lie to the police? They are my grandparents. They are supposed to love me." "Am I crazy, Mom? Did I do it and forget?" She was gaslighting herself. My parents and sister had manipulated reality so effectively in such a short amount of time that my brilliant, logical daughter was questioning her own sanity. I sat down beside her and pulled her into my lap, rocking her like she was a toddler. I brushed the hair away from her tear-stained face. I looked her dead in the eyes. "Maya, listen to me," I said, my voice fierce and steady. "I need you to listen to me. You are not crazy. You did not do this. I know you did not do this." She sniffled, looking at me with hope warring with despair. "How do you know?" Everyone says I did. The police believe them. I know because I know you, I said. I know you are responsible. I know you would never take the car without asking. And I know your aunt. But that was not enough. I needed to give her something solid. I needed to stop her from spiraling. I made a decision right then. I could not tell her everything yet because she was a bad liar, and I needed her reaction to be genuine when we sprang the trap. But I could give her peace. I cupped her face. Maya, look at me. I have proof. Her eyes widened. Proof? I nodded. Real proof. I cannot show you yet because we have to be smart. We have to wait for the right moment to use it. If we use it too early, they will find a way to wiggle out of it. But I have something that proves you were not in that car. It proves Tiffany was driving, and it proves Grandma and Grandpa are lying. You do, she whispered, fresh tears spilling over. I do. I promise you on my life, you are not going to jail. You are not going to lose your future. We are going to let them think they won for a few days. We are going to let them dig their own graves, and then we are going to bury them. Maya collapsed against me, the tension leaving her body in a rush. She believed me. She trusted me. Why would they do this, Mom? She asked, her voice muffled by my shirt. Why do they hate me? They do not hate you, baby, I said, feeling the cold rage hardening in my chest. They just love themselves more, and that is unforgivable. I stayed with her until she fell into a restless sleep, holding her hand until her breathing evened out. I watched the sun start to rise through her curtains, casting long shadows across the floor. I thought about the text messages waiting on my phone, the voicemail from my mother that I had not listened to yet. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street. My family had declared war on my daughter. They had tried to sacrifice her to save their golden child. They thought I was weak. They thought I would roll over and pay the bills and clean up the mess like I always did. I walked out of Maya's room and closed the door softly. I went to my home office and sat down at my computer. I inserted the memory card from the dashcam into the reader. I needed to see it. I needed to see every second of their betrayal. I was not just a mother anymore. I was the executioner, and the trial was about to begin. The sun rose over the suburbs with an audacity that felt personal. It was a bright Tuesday morning, the kind where neighbors walked their dogs and sprinklers hissed over green lawns. But inside my kitchen, the air felt heavy and stagnant, like the atmosphere inside a tomb. I had not slept. My eyes felt like they were filled with sand, and every muscle in my body was coiled tight, ready for a fight. I prayed would not happen, but knew was inevitable. I sat at the island staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Upstairs, Maya was asleep or pretending to be. I had checked on her 4 times during the night, watching her chest rise and fall, needing to reassure myself that she was actually home and not in that cold metal cell. My phone sat on the marble counter face up. It had been silent since the chaos of the night before, but I knew that silence was temporary. It was the deep breath before the scream. At 8:15 exactly, it vibrated. The screen lit up with a photo of my mother Linda holding a glass of wine and smiling a smile that used to make me feel warm, but now just looked predatory. I stared at it. Part of me, the part that was still a frightened daughter wanting her mommy, wanted to ignore it. But the new part of me, the part that had watched dashcam footage of my family plotting against my child, knew I had to answer. I needed to hear it. I needed to let them dig the hole so deep they could never climb out. I swiped answer and put it on speaker. "Hello, Mom," I said, my voice raspy from lack of sleep. There was no greeting, no hello, no asking how I was holding up after spending the night in a jail waiting room. There was definitely no question about Maya, her 16-year-old granddaughter, who she had watched get put into the back of a police car like a felon. "Sarah, you need to wire money to your sister's account immediately." Her voice was not frantic. It was demanding. It was the voice she used when a waiter brought her the wrong salad dressing. It was cold and entitled. I blinked, rubbing my temples. "Excuse me." "Tiffany is in agony, Sarah. She has severe whiplash. The doctor says she might have spinal compression. She needs an MRI. She needs heavy-duty pain medication, and she is going to need at least 6 weeks of physical therapy." Her insurance lapsed because she is between jobs again, and they are demanding payment up front for the scans. Plus, there are the fines. The police impounded her purse with her ID in the wreck, and getting it back is going to cost money. I felt a laugh bubbling up in my throat, a hysterical, dangerous sound. Between jobs. Tiffany had been between jobs for 6 years. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Maya is upstairs. She is traumatized. She spent 4 hours in a holding cell. Do you want to know how she is?" Linda sighed loud and long, a sound of immense irritation. "Sarah, do not try to make this about Maya right now. Maya is physically fine. She walked away without a scratch, which is a miracle considering how recklessly she was driving. Tiffany is the victim here. She is the one lying in a hospital bed because your daughter decided to go on a joyride." "She did not go on a joyride." "Mom," I said, my hand gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. "She was sleeping." "Stop it. Just stop it. I am not going to listen to you defend her bad behavior anymore. This is exactly why she is out of control, because you never hold her accountable. You and your husband always treated her like a little princess, and now look where we are. My husband. She brought my dead husband into this. The man who had worked himself into an early grave to ensure his family was taken care of. We need $10,000, Sarah, today. Right now, $10,000. The number hung in the air. For what I asked quietly, for the medical bills Linda snapped, and for the pain and suffering. Your sister is going to be out of commission for weeks. She cannot look for work like this. She needs to pay her rent. She needs groceries. You have plenty of money, Sarah. We know you do. You just bought that ridiculous car for a teenager. If you can throw away 50 grand on a toy, you can afford to help your sister who was injured by that toy." I closed my eyes. It was always about the money. It had always been about the money. For a moment, I let myself remember. I remembered 5 years ago when my father Gary retired without a penny in savings because he had gambled it away on bad stock tips. I was the one who stepped in. I paid off their mortgage, $200,000. I wrote the check and handed it to them, and they had hugged me and told me I was a good daughter. I remembered 3 years ago when Tiffany maxed out 3 credit cards trying to become an influencer, buying designer clothes she could not afford. The debt collectors were calling the house, threatening to sue. Mom had called me crying, saying the stress was going to kill my father. So I paid it. $15,000. I cleared her debt. Tiffany never even said thank you. She just posted a picture of herself with a new Gucci bag the next week, captioned, "Self-made." I remembered the monthly transfers, the utility bills I paid, the groceries I bought, the vacations I subsidized. I was the family bank. I was the safety net. And they hated me for it. They hated that they needed me, so they treated me like a servant to make themselves feel better. "I am not sending $10,000, Mom," I said. "I am not sending a dime." The silence on the other end was deafening. It was the silence of a predator assessing its prey. "Excuse me," Linda said, her voice dropping an octave, dangerous and low. I said no. "I paid off your house, Mom. I paid off Tiffany's cards. I pay your property taxes every year. I have given this family nearly $500,000 over the last decade. And yesterday you watched the police arrest my daughter for a crime she did not commit, and you did not say a word to stop it. The bank is closed." "You ungrateful little brat," Linda hissed. "After everything we did for you. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. And this is how you repay us, by abandoning your sister when she is injured, by letting your delinquent daughter destroy our lives." My phone beeped, a text message coming through. I pulled the phone away from my ear to look at it. It was from Tiffany. I stared at the screen, reading the words over and over. "You need to buy me a new car, Sarah, a Mercedes GLK, white. I need it by Friday because I have interviews lined up and I cannot take the bus with my neck like this. If you do not buy it, I am going to sue Maya in civil court. Mom says the criminal charges might get dropped because she is a minor, but a civil suit for damages that sticks. I will sue her for every penny of her trust fund. She will have a record. She will never get into college. She will be paying me for the rest of her life. Do the right thing." I read the text again, letting the sheer malice of it sink into my bones. She was threatening to sue her 16-year-old niece. She was threatening to destroy Maya's future, not because she was hurt, but because she saw an opportunity to get a free Mercedes. She was leveraging the legal system to extort me. I put the phone back to my ear. "Mom," I said, my voice oddly calm. "Did you know Tiffany just texted me?" "Good," Linda said. "She told me she was going to." "She is right, Sarah. If you do not help us voluntarily, we will be forced to take legal action. We have already spoken to a personal injury lawyer. He says we have a slam dunk case against Maya. Reckless endangerment resulting in bodily harm, intentional infliction of emotional distress. We can go after her trust fund. We can go after your assets. You would sue your own granddaughter." "She almost killed my daughter," Linda screamed. "She made her choice. Now you need to make yours. 10,000 cash today for the medical bills. And you figure out the car situation with Tiffany. If I do not see a transfer confirmation by noon, we are telling the lawyer to file the paperwork. And Sarah, do not think we are bluffing. We have witnesses. Gary and I saw everything. We saw how crazy Maya was acting. We will testify." They were doubling down. They were not just lying to the police, they were preparing to lie under oath in a courtroom to rob my daughter of her inheritance. The betrayal was so absolute, it was almost liberating. There was no gray area left. There was no misunderstanding. This was a shakedown. "Okay," I said. "Okay," what Linda asked, suspicious of my sudden surrender. "Okay, I understand. You win. I cannot let Maya have a record. I cannot let you sue her." I heard Linda let out a breath, a sound of triumphant relief. "Finally, you are seeing sense. I knew you would do the right thing, Sarah. You always do. We just want what is fair." "I will get the money." I lied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "I have to move some investments around. It might take 24 hours to clear." "Noon," Linda said sharply. "You have until noon to send the 10,000. The car can wait until the weekend, but Tiffany needs to know it is coming." "I will text Tiffany," I said. "I will let her know." "Good. And Sarah, do not bring Maya around for a while. Your father is very upset. He does not want to see her face until she learns some respect." She hung up. I stood there in the silence of my kitchen, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. I looked at the text from Tiffany again. A Mercedes. She wanted a Mercedes for crashing my Toyota into a tree while drunk. I laughed. It was a short, sharp sound that startled me. I walked over to the coffee machine and poured the cold coffee down the sink. I rinsed the cup with slow, deliberate movements. They wanted money. They wanted a car. They wanted to squeeze me until I was dry, just like they always had. But they had made one fatal miscalculation. They assumed I was still the daughter who craved their love. They did not realize that in the span of 12 hours, they had killed that version of me. I picked up my phone and opened the text thread with Tiffany. I typed carefully, my fingers steady. "I will handle it. Come to the house tomorrow night for dinner. Bring Mom and Dad. I will have the check ready and we can sign the paperwork for the car. I want to settle this out of court." I hit send. Then I scrolled up to the contact for the sheriff's deputy who had arrested my daughter. His card was sitting on the counter next to my keys. I did not call him yet. Not yet. I needed one more thing. I needed David. I walked to the living room where my laptop sat open. The dashcam footage was paused on the screen. The timestamp showed the exact moment of impact. But there was another file I had not watched yet. The audio file from inside the cabin post-crash. The conversation Tiffany had immediately after the airbags deployed. I clicked play. The sound of Tiffany groaning filled the room, followed by the rustling of a phone being pulled from a pocket. Then the dialing tone. Then my mother's voice, clear as a bell. "Mom!" I crashed, Sarah's car. "I am drunk, Mom. If the cops come, I am going to jail. It is my third strike." And then my mother's voice, calm and chilling. "Listen to me, Tiffany. Listen to me. Where is Maya? Is she home? She is sleeping." "Good. Go wake her up. Get her outside. Give her the keys. We will say she stole it. She is a minor, Tiffany. They will seal the record. She will not do time. You cannot go back to jail. We will fix this. Just stick to the story." I stopped the recording. I had them. I had them on tape conspiring to frame a child. I had them admitting to the DUI. I had everything. But a simple arrest was not enough, not anymore. After that phone call, after the demand for $10,000, after the threat to sue my daughter, I wanted more than justice. I wanted total destruction. I picked up my phone again and dialed David. He answered on the first ring, his voice a whisper. "Sarah, I am so sorry." "Don't apologize, David," I said, cutting him off. "Just listen. I need you to come over, now, and you need to bring Tiffany's bank statements, the ones she hides from you." "Why, Sarah? What are you going to do?" "I am going to buy your wife a car," I said, "and then I am going to send her to hell." The phone rang again barely 5 minutes after I had hung up on my mother. The screen displayed a toll-free number that I recognized immediately. It was my auto insurance provider. I took a deep breath, forcing my heart rate to slow down. I needed to be the CPA now, the cool-headed professional who dealt with audits and tax evasion, not the terrified mother of a teenager facing felonies. I swiped answer. "This is Sarah," I said, my voice flat. "Hello, Sarah, this is Mark from the claims department. I am calling regarding the incident involving your Toyota 4Runner last night. We received the preliminary police report, and I needed to clarify a few details with you before we proceed with processing the claim." Mark sounded nice. He sounded like a man sitting in a cubicle with pictures of his dog on the wall, doing a job he probably hated. He had no idea he was about to drop another anvil on my chest. "Go ahead, Mark," I said, walking over to the sink to pour myself a glass of water, my hand trembling slightly. "Okay, so I am looking at the police report here, and it lists the driver as Amaya Miller, age 16. I am pulling up your policy declarations page, and I do not see Amaya Miller listed as a rated driver on this vehicle. In fact, I show you as the sole operator. Is that correct?" "Yes," I said, the water glass halting halfway to my mouth. "She just got her license 2 weeks ago. I was going to add her next week when the paperwork came through." I see, Mark said, and the tone of his voice shifted. It lost that customer service warmth and became bureaucratic and cold. "Well, Sarah, that presents a significant problem. You see, your policy has a strict exclusion for unlisted household residents, especially those under the age of 25. If an unlisted teenage driver operates the insured vehicle and causes a total loss collision, we reserve the right to deny coverage completely." The glass slipped from my fingers. It hit the floor and shattered, sending water and shards of crystal skittering across the kitchen tiles. I did not even flinch. "Deny coverage." I repeated the words, tasting like copper. "Yes, ma'am. If your daughter was driving that car with your permission, even implied permission, and she is not on the policy, we are not liable for the damages. That is a $48,000 vehicle, Sarah. Plus, we are looking at significant property damage liability. The report states the vehicle struck a city-owned oak tree and damaged the landscaping of the adjacent property. The city charges about $5,000 just to remove a damaged tree of that size, not to mention the replanting fees. You could be looking at a total liability of over $60,000 out of pocket. $60,000. The room spun. That car was not bought with my salary. It was bought with the life insurance payout from my husband's death. It was the last tangible piece of security he had left for Maya. He had wanted her to have a safe, reliable car for college. He had wanted her to be protected. And now, because of my sister's lies, that money was gone. Vaporized into twisted metal and city fines. "But the police report says it was theft," I said, trying to find a loophole, my brain scrambling for purchase. "It says she stole the car. Does that not change things? Theft is covered under comprehensive right." There was a long pause on the line. The sound of Mark typing on a keyboard echoed in my ear. "Technically, yes," Mark said slowly. "If the vehicle was stolen, we would cover the loss. However, most policies have a family exclusion clause for theft. If a family member who resides in the home or has access to the keys takes the vehicle, it is often considered unauthorized use rather than theft in the eyes of the insurer, unless you are willing to fully prosecute. And Sarah, I have to be honest with you. If we pay out a $50,000 claim based on a theft by a minor, we will be subrogating against the driver. That means once we pay you, we will sue your daughter to recover our losses. She would start her adult life with a $50,000 judgment against her credit. I felt like the walls of my kitchen were physically closing in on me, crushing the air out of my lungs. It was a trap. A perfect, airtight trap. If I admitted Maya was driving to save her from the criminal charges, the insurance would deny the claim. You see, I would lose $60,000. I would lose my husband's gift. I would have to pay for my sister's destruction out of my own savings. If I let the theft charge stand to get the insurance payout, the insurance company would sue my daughter anyway, destroying her financial future before it even began, and she would still have a felony record. There was no way out. No matter which version of my family's lie I accepted, we lost. Maya lost. Sarah. Are you still there? Mark asked. I am here, I whispered. We need a recorded statement from you, Mark said. We need you to confirm who was driving and whether they had permission. We cannot move forward without it. And frankly, given the conflicting statements between the family members at the scene, we are flagging this claim for a potential fraud investigation. We need the truth, Sarah. The truth. The irony was so sharp it could cut glass. The truth was the only thing that could save us, but the truth was currently locked on a memory card in my pocket, and I was terrified to release it too early. If I told Mark right now that my sister was driving drunk, he would deny the claim anyway because Tiffany was definitely not on my policy, and a DUI usually voids coverage clauses. I cannot give a statement right now, Mark, I said, my voice gaining a sudden steel edge. I need to consult with my attorney. I understand, Mark said, his tone warning. But please know that any delay in cooperation can be grounds for claim denial. You have 48 hours, Sarah. I hung up the phone and dropped it onto the counter. I stared at the mess on the floor, the broken glass and the puddle of water reflecting the overhead lights. $60,000. Plus the $10,000 my mother wanted, plus the Mercedes Tiffany was demanding, plus the legal fees for Maya's defense. They were not just trying to send my daughter to jail. They were trying to bankrupt me. They were trying to strip mine every asset I had acquired since my husband died. My parents knew about the life insurance. They knew about the trust. They had always looked at that money with greedy eyes, calling it a windfall, as if my husband dying of pancreatic cancer at 36 was a winning lottery ticket. They thought I was made of money. They thought I could just write a check and make this go away. They did not care that it was Maya's college fund. They did not care that it was my retirement. They only cared that Tiffany needed a soft place to land, and I was the designated cushion. I walked over to the pantry and grabbed the broom. I started sweeping up the shards of glass, the rhythmic swish, swish sound filling the silence. I thought about Maya upstairs, huddled in her bed, terrified of the future. I thought about the police officer looking at her with disdain. I thought about my mother's voice on the phone demanding money while her granddaughter faced a felony. They had cornered me. They had blocked every exit. They had weaponized the police, the legal system, and now the insurance company against me. But a cornered animal is the most dangerous kind. I swept the last of the glass into the dustpan and dumped it into the trash. I walked back to my home office and looked at the computer screen. The video file was still open. The audio of my mother coaching Tiffany to frame Maya was paused at the exact moment she said, "She is a minor, Tiffany. They will seal the record." I realized then that this was not just about clearing Maya's name anymore. It was not just about avoiding a criminal record. It was about survival. If I did not destroy them, they would consume us. They would take the money, the car, the reputation, and the future until there was nothing left but a husk. I picked up my phone again. I did not call the insurance company back. I dialed David. "I need you here in 20 minutes, I said when he answered. "And David, bring everything. Bring the credit card statements. Bring the bank transfers. Bring every lie she has ever told you, because I am done paying for your wife's mistakes." I hung up and sat down in the leather chair my husband used to sit in. I placed my hands on the desk. They wanted a war over money. They wanted a war over a car. Fine. I would give them a war. But they had forgotten that I was the one who did their taxes. I was the one who knew where every single skeleton was buried because I was the one who had paid for the shovels. and I was about to dig them all up. The silence in my house after I hung up with the insurance agent was heavy enough to crush bones. $60,000. That was the price tag on my family's betrayal. I sat in the leather chair of my home office staring blankly at the wall of framed diplomas and certifications that proved I was smart, capable, and meticulous. I was a CPA. I made a living finding the things people tried to hide. I tracked down pennies in ledgers worth billions. I found tax fraud in messy shoeboxes of receipts. My entire career was built on the premise that the truth always leaves a paper trail if you know where to look. And yet here I was letting my 16-year-old daughter take the fall for a crime she did not commit because I was too paralyzed by emotional blackmail to think like an auditor. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, trying to slow the panic that was making my hands shake. I needed to think. I needed to stop being a sister and a daughter and start being a forensic accountant. I replayed the timeline in my head, the crash, the police, the accusations, the insurance call. Mark from the claims department had said something that stuck in my brain like a splinter. He said they needed to know who was driving. He said fraud investigation. My eyes snapped open and landed on a small black box sitting on the corner of my bookshelf. It was the empty packaging for the dashcam I had bought for the Toyota 2 days before we left for Mexico. The dashcam. I felt a jolt of electricity shoot down my spine. I had forgotten. In the chaos of seeing the twisted metal and the flashing lights and my screaming sister, I had completely forgotten about the upgrade. I had not just installed a standard camera. I had installed the Sentinel 360. It was a top-of-the-line security system designed for fleet vehicles and high-value assets. It had interior and exterior lenses, night vision audio recording, and most importantly, an independent LTE connection that uploaded critical events directly to the cloud. It did not need the house Wi-Fi. It did not need the car to be running. It just needed a power source and a signal. I lunged for my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard as I navigated to the security portal. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic rhythm of hope and terror. I typed in my credentials and waited. The loading circles spun on the screen, taunting me. "Please," I whispered to the empty room, "please let it be there. Please let it have uploaded before the battery died." The screen flashed and the dashboard populated. There were 27 events recorded in the last 48 hours. I clicked on the most recent folder labeled Critical Impact Event. But before I watched the end, I needed to see the beginning. I needed to know how she got in. I scrolled back to the timestamp from earlier that evening, around 9:30 p.m. I clicked play on the file labeled Interior Motion Detected. The video feed was crisp and clear, the night vision turning the interior of the garage into a ghostly green landscape. I watched as the driver's side door opened. The interior dome light flooded the cabin, illuminating the intruder. It was Tiffany. She was not wearing pajamas. She was dressed in a tight sequined mini dress that looked like it cost more than her monthly rent. Her hair was done up in loose waves, and her makeup was heavy, ready for a night out. She did not look like someone who was house-sitting. She looked like someone who was going hunting. But it was what she was holding that made my blood turn to ice. In her left hand, she held the key fob to the Toyota. In her right hand, she held a keychain with a bright yellow tag. I leaned closer to the screen, squinting. I recognized that yellow tag. It was the tag for my spare house key, the key I kept in a lockbox in my office safe, the key I had given to my parents only for extreme emergencies, like a fire or a flood. My parents had given her the key. They knew. They knew I did not want her driving my car. They knew I did not want her in my house alone. And they had given her the access anyway. It was a betrayal so casual and so complete that it almost stole my breath. They had handed the arsonist the matches and pointed her toward my life. I watched Tiffany settle into the driver's seat. She adjusted the rearview mirror, checking her lipstick in the reflection. She did not look nervous. She did not look like she was stealing. She looked entitled. She ran her hands over the leather steering wheel with a possessive smirk. Finally, she said to the empty car, "You deserve this, Tiff. You deserve nice things too." She started the engine. The roar of the V6 engine filled my office speakers. I watched as she backed out of the garage, the camera switching to the rear view, showing the garage door closing behind her. I clicked on the next video file. This one was time-stamped 20 minutes later. The location tag showed she was on the highway heading toward downtown. The interior camera view showed Tiffany driving with one hand. In her other hand, she was holding a bottle. It was not water. It was a liter bottle of Grey Goose vodka. I watched in horror as she unscrewed the cap with her teeth and took a long swig, her head tilting back, her eyes leaving the road for a terrifying 3 seconds. She was drinking while driving my daughter's car. She was committing a felony in real time, recorded in high definition. But she was not just drinking, she was performing. I noticed she had propped her phone up on the dashboard mount I used for GPS. The screen was glowing, and I could see the cascading hearts and comments of a live stream. She was on TikTok, not her main account, which I followed, and which was full of reposted inspirational quotes and complaints about her ex-boyfriends. This was a different account. I squinted at the screen, trying to read the username reflected in the side window. Bad Girl Tiff _XO. She had a secret account, an account where she played a character, and tonight the character was a rich party girl driving a brand new SUV. I turned up the volume on my laptop. "Hey guys," she shouted over the music blasting from the stereo. "Welcome back to the stream. Yeah, we are taking the new whip out tonight. My sister finally came through with the upgrade. About time, right? She owes me." She took another swig of vodka and laughed, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. Someone in the chat must have asked whose car it was, because she rolled her eyes and scoffed. "It is mine, basically," she said. "I mean, technically it is my niece's, but she is literally 16. She does not need a rig like this. It is wasted on her. She is such a nerd, she will probably just drive it to the library." "No, this baby needs a real driver. This baby needs to be seen." She swerved slightly, correcting the wheel with a jerk that made me flinch. "You guys want to see how fast she goes?" she asked the phone. "No," I whispered at the screen. "No, Tiffany, stop." She slammed her foot down. The engine roared. The speedometer in the corner of the dashcam feed climbed. 60, 70. 85. She was weaving through traffic, cutting off cars, laughing maniacally as she engaged in a race with no one but her own ego. I watched her face. It was not the face of the sister I grew up with. It was the face of a stranger. A bitter, jealous, reckless stranger who hated me and my daughter so much that she was willing to risk our lives and property for a few hundred likes from strangers on the internet. And then it happened. The timestamp read 10:42 p.m. She was driving through our neighborhood on the way back, probably realizing she was too drunk to be out. She was holding the vodka bottle in her lap, now the level significantly lower than it had been 20 minutes ago. She looked down at her phone to read a comment. "You are a queen." Tiff, one comment read. I could see it clearly on the phone screen. She smiled, preening at the camera. "I know, right? I am the queen of this city. I am untouchable." She drifted. Just a few inches. But at 50 miles an hour in a residential zone, a few inches is everything. The tires hit the curb. The steering wheel jerked violently in her hands. She screamed, dropping the vodka bottle. It shattered against the center console, spraying glass and alcohol everywhere. She overcorrected, slamming the wheel to the left. The car spun. The world inside the camera frame turned into a blur of motion and flashing streetlights. And then impact. The sound was deafening, even through the computer speakers. The crunch of metal, the explosion of glass, the sickening thud of the airbags deploying. The camera shook violently and then settled at a crooked angle. Silence. Dust motes danced in the dome light. The hissing of the radiator was the only sound for a long 10 seconds. Then a groan. Tiffany moved, shifting in the driver's seat. She pushed the deflated airbag away from her face. She looked around, eyes wide with panic, but clearly alive. She touched her neck, wincing. She did not check on the car. She did not check to see if she had hit anyone. The first thing she did was reach for her phone. She ended the live stream. Then she dialed. I leaned in closer, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Who was she calling? 911. Her husband. "Mom." She sobbed into the phone. "Mom, I crashed. I crashed Sarah's car. I am drunk, Mom. If the cops come, I am going to jail. It is my third strike." I listened as my mother, the woman who had birthed me, who had taught me to tie my shoes calmly, instructed my sister to frame my daughter. I sat back in my chair, the video file ending and looping back to the beginning. I had it. I had everything. I had proof of the break-in. I had proof of the DUI. I had proof of the reckless driving. I had proof of the conspiracy. I looked at the digital file sitting on my desktop. It was not just a video. It was a weapon. It was a nuclear bomb that would vaporize my family's lies and leave nothing but the scorched earth of truth. My hands were no longer shaking. A cold calm settled over me. They wanted a Mercedes. They wanted $10,000. They wanted my daughter's future. I reached for my phone and dialed David's number again. He picked up on the second ring. "Did you find them?" I asked. "Yes," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I found the statement, Sarah. It is bad. She has a credit card I did not know about. It is maxed out, $20,000, and there are transfers to your parents' account." I closed my eyes. Of course there were. It was a circle of leeches feeding off each other. "Bring it all, David," I said. "Bring every scrap of paper. I'm going to build a case that even God cannot forgive." I hung up and looked at the dashcam footage one last time. I watched Tiffany laugh and drink my vodka in my car. "Enjoy it, Tiffany," I whispered to the screen. "Enjoy your 15 minutes of fame, because tomorrow you are going to be famous for a very different reason." The video file continued to play, but the silence in my office was deafening. On the screen, dust motes danced in the beam of the interior dome light. The car was dead. The engine had stopped its ticking. The only sound coming from the speakers was the ragged, wet breathing of my sister. She was alive, she was moving, and she was reaching for her phone. I leaned in closer to the monitor, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was the moment. This was the gap between the crash and the arrival of the police. This was where the truth lived. Tiffany did not dial 911. She did not call an ambulance to check for internal bleeding. She did not even get out of the car to see what she had hit. She tapped a speed dial number. I watched the screen of her phone reflect in the side window. It read Mom. The call connected on the second ring. The audio quality from the dash cam was terrifyingly crisp, picking up every sniffle, every whimper, and every word spoken through the Bluetooth system that had not yet disconnected. Mom Tiffany sobbed, her voice thick with liquor and panic. "Mom, pick up, hello." My mother's voice filled my office. It was sleepy, confused. "Tiffany, it is almost 11 o'clock. What is wrong?" "Mom, I crashed. I messed up bad. I crashed Sarah's car." I watched my sister's face on the screen. She looked like a child caught breaking a vase, terrified not of the danger, but of the punishment. "I am drunk, Mom," she wailed. "I am so drunk. I was streaming and I hit a tree. If the cops come, I am done. I am going to jail. It is my third strike, Mom. They told me last time, if I get another DUI, I am doing 5 years mandatory." I froze. 5 years. I knew Tiffany had a history with alcohol. I knew she had a suspended license a few years back, but I did not know she was on her last strike. I did not know she was facing prison time. My parents had hidden that from me, just like they hid everything else that might make their golden child look tarnished. There was a pause on the line, a long, heavy silence where I could almost hear the gears turning in my mother's head. When Linda spoke again, the sleepiness was gone. Her voice was sharp, cold, and calculating. It was not the voice of a mother comforting a child. It was the voice of a general commanding a soldier. "Where are you?" Linda asked. "Just down the street from Sarah's house. I was coming back. Is anyone else involved? Did you hit another car?" "No, just a tree. But the car is totaled, Mom. It is destroyed. The airbags went off. I cannot drive it away." "Listen to me, Tiffany." Linda's voice dropped an octave, deadly serious. "Do not call the police yet. Do not get out of the car. Where is Maya?" "She is sleeping inside. Sarah and her are asleep. They got back hours ago." "Good. Here is what you're going to do. You are going to get out of that car right now. You are going to run back to the house. Do not let anyone see you. You are going to wake Maya up." "Why?" Tiffany whimpered. "Because you are not going to jail. Linda snapped. "You are my daughter, and I am not letting you go to prison because of one mistake. Go wake Maya up. Tell her you heard a noise. Get her outside. Get her near the car. I do not understand, Mom. Use your head, Tiffany. Maya is 16. She is a minor. If she was driving, the record is sealed. They do not send teenage girls to prison for joyriding. They give them a slap on the wrist, community service, maybe probation. It goes away when she turns 18. But Sarah will kill me," Tiffany cried. "Sarah will handle it," Linda said, and the dismissal in her voice hit me harder than the crash itself. "Sarah has money. She has lawyers. She can fix this. She is rich, Tiffany. A wrecked car is nothing to her. But prison is everything to you. We have to protect you." I sat there unable to breathe. My lungs felt like they had turned to stone. "Do it," Linda commanded. "Blame Maya. Say she stole the keys while you were sleeping. Say you ran out to stop her and she crashed. Stick to that story no matter what. Do not deviate. I am waking up your father. We are coming over. We will back you up. Go. Now." The call ended. On the screen, Tiffany wiped her face. She looked at the phone, then at the dashboard. A change came over her expression. The panic receded, replaced by a chilling resolve. She opened the door and stumbled out into the night, running back toward my house, toward my sleeping daughter. I hit pause. A wave of nausea rolled over me, so violent and sudden that I barely made it to the trash can in the corner of the room. I retched until my stomach was empty, and then I retched some more. My body was trying to purge the poison of what I had just heard. It was not just fear. It was not just panic. It was a premeditated calculation. My mother, my own mother, had weighed the value of my daughter's life against my sister's freedom, and she had not even hesitated. She had decided in a split second that Maya was disposable, that Maya was nothing more than a shield to be used and discarded to protect Tiffany. She is a minor. The record is sealed. She did not care about the trauma. She did not care about the fear. She did not care that she was teaching her granddaughter that truth did not matter. All she cared about was saving Tiffany from the consequences of her own actions. And the way she spoke about me. Sarah will handle it. Sarah has money. I was not a person to her. I was not a daughter. I was a resource. I was a bank account with a pulse. I was the fixer, the one who cleaned up the messes, the one who paid the bills so they could live their chaotic, selfish lives without consequence. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand and sat back on the floor, leaning against the wall. I felt cold, freezing cold. Freezing. I was shaking so hard my teeth chattered. I thought about every birthday dinner where my mother fawned over Tiffany. I thought about every time my father told me I was the strong one, the one they did not have to worry about. I realized now that it was not a compliment. It was an excuse. It was their justification for neglect. They loved Tiffany. They used me, and they were willing to sacrifice Maya. I looked back at the computer screen. The image of Tiffany frozen mid-stride running to frame my child burned into my retinas. They had no idea this existed. They thought they were safe. They thought they had controlled the narrative. They thought they were smarter than me. I stood up slowly, my legs trembling. I walked over to the desk and ejected the memory card. I held it in my hand, feeling its sharp edges. It was so small, a tiny piece of plastic, but it held the power to destroy everything. I was going to use it. I was going to use every single second of it. But first, I needed to secure it. I made 3 copies. I uploaded one to a secure server my law firm used. I put one on a thumb drive and hid it in the hollow spine of a book on my shelf. I kept the original in my pocket. I went to the bathroom and washed my face. I brushed my teeth, scrubbing away the taste of bile. I looked at myself in the mirror. My skin was pale, my eyes dark and hollow. But there was something else there too, a hardness that had not been there yesterday. I was done crying. I was done vomiting. I walked back into the kitchen. I needed to make one more phone call before I sprang the trap. I needed the one person in that family who might still have a shred of decency left. I needed David. If Tiffany was stealing from me, she was definitely stealing from him. And if I was going to burn this house down, I wanted to make sure he had a chance to get out the door first. I dialed his number. My hands were steady now. The nausea was gone, replaced by a cold, empty hunger for justice. "David," I said when he answered, "I need you to come over." "Alone." "Why, Sarah?" What is going on? I found something, I said. I found the truth. And it is going to break your heart, but it is going to save your soul. Come now. The doorbell rang exactly 20 minutes later. I watched David through the peephole before unlocking the deadbolt. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, and he was still wearing the same clothes from the night before, rumpled and stained with sweat. He stood on my porch like a man waiting for a firing squad, shoulders hunched, hands wringing together. "Come in, David," I said, stepping aside. He walked into the hallway and immediately dropped to his knees. The sudden movement startled me. He did not look at me. He looked at the floor, his voice trembling. "Sarah, I am so sorry. I am so sorry for everything. I should have stopped her. I knew she was drinking again. I knew she was out of control. I failed you. I failed Maya." "Get up, David," I said, my voice softer than I intended. He shook his head, refusing to rise. "No, I need you to know. I thought she was getting better. She swore she was going to meetings. She told me she was house-sitting for you to make some extra money to pay back the credit cards. I did not know she was taking the car. I swear on my mother's life, Sarah, I did not know. When I got that call last night, I thought my world was ending. And then when I saw Maya, I felt like a monster." I reached down and took his arm, pulling him up. He was a big man, but he felt light, hollowed out by guilt. I led him into the living room and pushed him onto the couch. "Sit down, David. We need to talk." He sat burying his face in his hands. "What is there to talk about, Sarah? Maya is in jail. Tiffany is in the hospital demanding you buy her a new car. Your parents are... God, your parents. They are backing her up. I tried to tell them, Sarah. I tried to tell Gary that this was insane, that Maya is a good kid, but he just shut me down. He told me to support my wife or get out. And you got in the ambulance, I said, not as an accusation, but as a statement of fact." "I did," he whispered. "I was a coward. I just wanted the screaming to stop. And I was scared, Sarah. I was scared that if I didn't go with her, she would spin some story about me too. She has done it before. She tells people I am abusive when I cut off her credit cards. She tells people I am controlling when I ask where the money went." I sat down on the chair opposite him. "Where did the money go, David?" He looked up, his eyes wet. "The savings. The emergency fund. $20,000, Sarah. It is gone." She drained it. Little by little over the last 6 months. Withdrawals at liquor stores, online shopping, transfers to accounts I didn't know existed. I only found out 2 days ago when the mortgage payment bounced. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a stack of crumpled papers. He threw them on the coffee table. "Here, look at it. Bank statements, credit card bills, collection notices. We are drowning, Sarah. She has ruined us. And I stayed. I stayed because I thought I could fix her. I thought if I just loved her enough, she would stop." I looked at the papers. They were a roadmap of addiction and narcissism. Thousands of dollars spent on clothes she never wore, hundreds spent at bars, and transfer after transfer to an account labeled Mom and Dad. She was not just stealing for herself. She was funneling money to my parents too, just like I had been. We were both being bled dry by the same vampires. "David," I said, leaning forward, "I need you to look at something." He wiped his eyes. "What is it?" I opened my laptop, which was sitting on the coffee table. The video file was queued up. "You think Maya crashed the car?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "That is what Tiffany said. That is what your parents said. Even the police. Watch this." I pressed play. David watched in silence. He watched his wife break into my house. He watched her drink vodka while driving. He watched her reckless joyride. He watched the crash. And then he listened. He listened to his wife call her mother. He listened to my mother tell her to frame a 16-year-old girl. When the video ended, David did not move. He stared at the black screen, his face completely devoid of color. He looked like he had been struck by lightning. "Oh my God," he whispered. "Oh my God." He looked at me, horror dawning in his eyes. She did not just crash the car. She framed a child. She framed your daughter. Yes. And Linda, your mother. She planned it. Yes. David stood up abruptly and walked to the window. He put his hands on the glass, his breathing coming in short, sharp gasps. I thought he might be having a panic attack. "They are monsters," he said, his voice shaking with a rage I had never heard from him before. "They are actual monsters." He turned back to me. His eyes were hard now, the sorrow replaced by a fierce clarity. "What do you need me to do, Sarah?" "I need you to be a witness," I said. "I need you to testify that Tiffany was drinking. I need you to confirm that she has a history of DUIs. And I need these financial records. I need to show the court that this was not just an accident. This was a pattern of behavior enabled by my parents for years." "You have them," he said, pointing at the stack of papers. "Take them all. I am done protecting her. I am done paying for her." He walked back to the couch and sat down, picking up the bank statements. He started sorting them, laying them out in rows. "Here," he said, pointing to a transaction. This was the day she said she was at therapy. $300 at a liquor store. And here, this transfer to your father. $500 the same day she told me she needed money for groceries. We spent the next hour going through every lie, every theft, every betrayal. By the time we were done, we had a mountain of evidence, not just of the crash, but of a systemic rot that went back years. David looked at the pile of paper. "I am going to divorce her," he said quietly. "I am going to file tomorrow. I cannot be married to someone who would do this to a child." "Good," I said. "You deserve better, David." He looked at me. "Sarah, do not let them get away with this. Do not let them talk their way out of it. Burn them down." "I will," I promised. He stood up to leave. As he reached the door, he turned back. "Does Maya know?" "Not yet. I am waiting for the right moment. Tell her I am sorry," he said. "Tell her I should have been better." "I will." After he left, I gathered the papers and put them in a safe. I had the video. I had the financial records. I had a witness. I looked at the clock. It was almost 5 p.m. My parents and Tiffany would be arriving for dinner in 2 hours, expecting a check and an apology. I walked into the kitchen and started preparing. I set the table. I put out the good china. I opened a bottle of wine. It was going to be a lovely dinner, the last one we would ever have as a family, and I was going to savor every single bite. I took a deep breath and stared at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. The woman staring back at me looked tired, but her eyes were dry and hard as flint. I needed to change that. I needed to sound broken. I needed to sound like a woman who had been crushed by the weight of the system and the guilt of destroying her family. I needed to be the Sarah they had trained me to be for 30 years, the doormat, the fixer, the bank. I reached for a glass of water and splashed some on my face, letting the droplets run down my cheeks like tears. I pinched the bridge of my nose hard until it throbbed, giving my voice a natural nasal quality. I hyperventilated for 10 seconds, forcing my heart rate up, making my breath catch in my throat. Then I dialed my mother. She answered on the first ring. I knew she was sitting by the phone waiting. She was probably already calculating how to spend the $10,000 she had demanded. "Hello, Sarah," she said, her voice clipped and cold. "Have you made your decision? Or are we calling the lawyer?" "Mom," I choked out the word, letting it crack in the middle. "Mom, please don't call the lawyer. I can't do it. I can't let Maya go to jail." There was a pause, the silence of a predator sensing weakness. "Stop crying," Sarah Linda said, but her tone had shifted. It was less aggressive now, more patronizing. "Crying isn't going to fix anything. Are you saying you are ready to cooperate?" "Yes," I sobbed. "Yes, I surrender. You win, Mom. You win. I just called my broker. I told him to liquidate my emergency portfolio. I am going to have the money. I will have a cashier's check for $10,000 tonight, and I will write a personal check for the down payment on Tiffany's Mercedes. Just please tell me you haven't filed the lawsuit yet." "Oh, honey." Linda sighed, the sound thick with false sympathy. "Of course we haven't filed it yet. We didn't want to hurt Maya. We love Maya. We just needed you to understand the gravity of the situation. We needed you to take responsibility." "I know," I sniffled. "I know. I was just so scared. But I see now that I was being selfish. Tiffany is hurt. She needs help. And Maya needs to learn a lesson, but not in prison. Exactly, Linda said. See, I told your father you would come around. I told him Sarah is a good mother deep down. She won't let her pride destroy her daughter's future. You are doing the right thing, sweetheart. This is what family does. We protect each other. The hypocrisy was so thick I could almost taste it. They were protecting Tiffany by sacrificing Maya and calling it love. But I kept the act up. I have one condition, Mom, I said, my voice trembling. Condition. Linda's voice hardened instantly. You aren't really in a position to make demands, Sarah. No, not a demand, a request. I want to end this tonight. I want it all over with. I am printing out a statement right now admitting that Maya took the keys without permission and that I am accepting full financial liability for the damages. I want you and Dad and Tiffany to come over for dinner. We can sign the papers. I can give you the checks. And we can put this behind us. I just want my family back. The line went quiet for a second while she conferred with someone, probably my father. Then she came back on the line, her voice dripping with satisfaction. That sounds lovely, Sarah. That sounds like a wonderful idea. A family dinner. It will be good for Maya to see us all together, to see that we forgive her even after what she did. Forgive her. I dug my fingernails into my palm until the skin broke. And Tiffany, I asked, is she up for it? Oh, she is in a lot of pain, obviously, Linda said quickly. But she is a trooper. She wants to see you. She wants to make peace. She just wants to know about the car. Tell her I am looking at listings right now. I lied. Tell her I found a white GLK with low mileage. I will have the details tonight. Perfect. We will be there at 7. And Sarah, make something nice. Your father has had a very stressful day because of all this. He needs a good meal. I will, Mom. I will make his favorite. I hung up the phone and let out a long, slow breath. The shaking in my hands stopped instantly. I wiped the water from my face. They were coming. They were walking right into the slaughterhouse, and they thought they were the butchers. My phone buzzed again. A text from Tiffany. Mom said you are buying the Mercedes. Make sure it has the premium package. I need the heated seats for my back injury. Also bring wine tonight. I need to relax. I stared at the message. The audacity was breathtaking. She had framed my daughter for a felony less than 24 hours ago, and now she was ordering upgrades on her extortion payment. I typed back, got it. See you at 7. Love you. Love you. The lie tasted like bile. I walked into the dining room. The table was set. The good china was out. I walked over to the sideboard where I kept the expensive crystal glasses. I pulled out a bottle of red wine. It was a vintage bottle my husband had been saving for a special occasion. He had been saving it for Maya's graduation. I looked at the label. Well, honey, I whispered to the empty room. I think saving our daughter from prison counts as a special occasion. I uncorked the bottle and let it breathe. Then I went to the living room. I checked the connections on the 85-inch television mounted on the wall. I made sure the HDMI cable was secure. I opened my laptop and connected it. I checked the audio output. The video file was queued up. The volume was set to maximum. I walked over to the window and looked out at the street. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the lawn. The gouge in the oak tree was still visible, a raw wound in the wood. I thought about Maya upstairs, terrified and alone. I thought about David, broken and ashamed. I thought about the insurance agent ready to deny my claim. And then I thought about my mother's voice on the phone. We protect each other. Tonight I was going to show them exactly what protection looked like. I was going to show them that a mother's love wasn't soft and yielding. It was a shield and a sword, and God help anyone who tried to hurt her child. I went back to the kitchen and started chopping vegetables. The knife hit the cutting board with a steady rhythmic thud. Chop, chop, chop. It sounded like a gavel coming down. At 7 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang, echoing through the house like a death knell. I took one last look at the dining room table. The roast was perfectly browned. The wine was breathing. The trap was set. I smoothed the front of my dress, forcing my hands to unclench. I walked to the door and opened it, revealing the people who shared my DNA and who had come to consume the rest of my life. They stood on the porch like a grotesque tableau of a family. My father Gary stood in front, holding a leather portfolio folder under his arm, looking like a businessman arriving for a merger rather than a grandfather arriving to extort his daughter. My mother Linda stood beside him, clutching her purse, with a look of practiced concern plastered onto her face. But the star of the show was Tiffany. She was wearing a soft foam neck brace that looked brand new, probably bought at a drugstore an hour ago. She was leaning heavily on David's arm, her face contorted in a mask of tragic suffering. She was wearing sweatpants and a loose t-shirt, a stark contrast to the sequined mini dress she had worn during her joyride the night before. "Hello, Sarah," my mother said, stepping inside and wrapping me in a hug that felt like a python constricting its prey. "I am so glad you came to your senses." I went rigid in her arms, but I did not pull away. "I am glad you came," I whispered, my voice trembling just enough to sell the performance. Tiffany limped into the hallway, dragging her right leg. I noted with a detached coldness that in the dashcam video, she had been favoring her left side after the airbag deployed. She could not even keep her lies straight. "Hey, sis," she croaked, wincing as if speaking caused her physical pain. "Thanks for letting us come over. Being at home, the trauma just keeps replaying, you know." I looked at her. I looked at the sister I had protected from bullies on the playground. The sister whose homework I had done so she would not fail. The sister whose debts I had paid. I looked for a shred of shame in her eyes. There was none, only a glint of triumph. "Come in," I said. "Dinner is ready." We moved to the dining room. David helped Tiffany into her chair with a gentleness that broke my heart because I knew he was acting too. He knew the truth now. He knew he was helping a monster sit down to feast on her victim. He caught my eye briefly and gave a barely perceptible nod. He was ready. My father did not sit down immediately. He placed the leather portfolio on the table and unzipped it. He pulled out a thick document stapled at the corner. "Let us handle the unpleasant business first," he said, his voice booming with false authority. "That way we can enjoy our meal as a family." He slid the document across the polished wood table toward me. I picked it up. It was titled Settlement Agreement and Admission of Liability. It looked official, printed on heavy bond paper, but I recognized the font. It was the same template my father used for his failing consulting contracts. "What is this, Dad?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "It is just a formality, Sarah," he said, sitting down and unfolding his napkin. "It states that you acknowledge Maya took the car without permission. It states that you accept full financial responsibility for the vehicle and for Tiffany's medical expenses. And it includes a clause preventing you or Maya from ever suing Tiffany for any reason related to this incident." "And the money?" I asked, looking at the last page. Linda chimed in, reaching for the wine bottle. "We did the math, honey. Between the hospital bills, the therapy Tiffany will need, the lost wages, and the emotional distress. We settled on a round number, $50,000, plus the replacement vehicle, of course, $50,000. I looked at the number typed in bold at the bottom of the page. They had not even bothered to itemize it. They just picked a number they thought I could afford, a number that would hurt me but not bankrupt me immediately. They wanted to shear the sheep, not skin it, so they could come back for more wool later. "And this keeps the police out of it?" I asked, looking at my mother. "Absolutely," Linda said, pouring herself a large glass of the expensive red wine. "Once you sign this and transfer the funds, we will go to the station tomorrow and amend our statements. We will tell them we do not wish to press charges. Since Maya is a minor and the family is settling it internally, they will drop the case. She will have a clean record." It was a lie, of course. You cannot just unring a felony bell by paying your mom. But they were banking on my fear, blinding me to legal reality. Tiffany let out a dramatic groan, shifting in her chair. "Can I have some of that wine, Mom?" she asked, reaching for the glass. "My neck is killing me. The doctor said alcohol might help the muscle relax." I watched my mother hand a glass of wine to her daughter, the daughter who had crashed a car while drunk less than 24 hours ago. "Of course," sweetie, Linda cooed. "You need to relax. You have been through so much trauma." I felt a presence in the doorway. Maya walked in. She was wearing her favorite hoodie and jeans. She looked small, pale, and terrified. We had rehearsed this. I told her exactly what to do. Sit. Be quiet. Let them think they have won. But seeing her there facing the people who had framed her, my maternal instinct screamed at me to send her away to protect her from their toxicity. "Maya," my father said, his voice stern. "Sit down." Maya walked to the far end of the table and sat in the chair closest to the hallway. She kept her eyes on her empty plate. "We are doing this for you," Maya Linda said, taking a sip of wine. "Your mother is making a huge sacrifice to clean up your mess. I hope you appreciate it. I hope you learn from this." Maya did not look up. She gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. Tiffany took a long swallow of wine and then turned her head stiffly to look at my daughter. A smirk played on her lips, a cruel twist of the mouth that I wanted to slap off her face. "You are lucky you have a rich mom, kiddo," Tiffany said. "If it were up to me, you would be sitting in juvie right now thinking about what you did. Stealing is wrong, Maya. Lying is wrong." The irony was so thick it was suffocating. Tiffany was lecturing my daughter on lying while wearing a fake neck brace and drinking wine she had extorted from me. "Next time, do not play with fire, niece." Tiffany sneered, her voice dripping with condescension. "You might get burned, or you might kill someone. You need to grow up." I saw Maya's shoulders shake. She was crying silently. "That is enough, Tiffany," I said, my voice quiet. "She gets it." "She better," Tiffany muttered, refilling her glass. "Because I am the one suffering here. I am the one who can barely move. I am the one having nightmares about the crash." My father tapped the document on the table. "Sign it, Sarah. Let us get this over with. I want to eat." I picked up the pen. It was a heavy silver pen, a gift from a client. It felt cold in my hand. I looked at the document. I looked at the clause where I would admit my daughter was a thief. I looked at the line where I would sign away $50,000 to the people who were currently drinking my wine and eating my food while destroying my life. "Just so I understand," I said, looking up at them. "If I sign this, you promise to tell the police it was a misunderstanding. You promise to leave Maya alone." "Yes, Sarah," my mother said, exasperated. "We are doing you a favor. Just sign the damn paper. And the $50,000, that covers everything." "For now," my father said. "If Tiffany needs surgery later, we might need to revisit it. But yes, $50,000 for now. Plus the Mercedes." "The Mercedes," Tiffany piped up, white, with the heated seats. "Do not forget." I looked at David. He was staring at his plate, his face gray. He knew what was coming. I looked at Maya. She looked up at me, and for a fleeting second I let my mask slip. I gave her a tiny nod. A promise. I uncapped the pen. "You know," I said, my voice changing. It dropping, the tremble, the fear, the submission. It becoming the voice I used in boardrooms when I caught a CEO embezzling funds. It becoming the voice of the executioner. "I really wanted to believe you were better than this." My father stopped chewing. My mother lowered her wine glass. Tiffany frowned, confused by the shift in tone. "What are you talking about?" "Sarah, just sign it," my mother snapped. "I really wanted to believe that if I gave you a chance, just one chance to tell the truth, you would take it. I wanted to believe that you would not actually frame a 16-year-old girl to save your own skin." "Sarah, what is this?" my father demanded, his face reddening. I put the pen down. I did not sign. "I am not signing this, Dad, and I am not giving you $50,000. Tiffany slammed her hand on the table. "You promised. You said you would pay. If you do not pay, I am calling the lawyer right now." "Go ahead," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Call him. Call the police, too. In fact, I think the police should be here. Don't you?" "Sarah, stop this nonsense immediately," Linda hissed, standing up. "You are upsetting your sister. You are upsetting the family." "The family?" I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "This isn't a family, Mom. This is a hostage situation, and I am done being the hostage." I stood up. I walked over to the sideboard and picked up the remote control for the 85-inch television mounted on the wall behind my father. "Before I sign anything," I said, pointing the remote at the black screen, "I think we should watch a little home movie. I think we should remind ourselves of what really happened last night." "What movie?" Tiffany asked, her voice rising in panic. "What are you doing?" "Just a little souvenir," I said, "from the dash cam." The blood drained from Tiffany's face so fast I thought she might faint. She froze her hand halfway to her wine glass. "Dashcam," she whispered. I pressed the power button. The huge screen flickered to life. The resolution was crystal clear. The wide-angle lens showed the interior of my garage bathed in the green glow of night vision. And there she was, Tiffany. Not in pajamas, not injured, but dressed to kill, holding my keys and talking to herself about how she deserved nice things. My parents turned in their chairs, their eyes glued to the screen. "What is this?" my father asked, his voice trembling. "Just watch," I said. The video cut to the driving footage. The music blared through my surround sound system, bass thumping against the dining room walls. Tiffany's face filled the screen, illuminated by the glow of her phone as she live-streamed. The vodka bottle was clear as day. The way she swerved, the way she slurred her words. My mother gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. Tiffany stood up, knocking her chair over. "Turn it off, Sarah." "Turn it off right now." I did not turn it off. I turned the volume up. The crash happened on screen. The sickening crunch of metal. The scream. And then the silence. And then the phone call. My mother's voice filled the room, amplified by the speakers, loud and undeniable. "Don't admit it, Tiffany. Maya is a minor. Blame her." The silence in the dining room was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. I looked at my mother. She was staring at the screen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. There was no defense. There was no spin. It was her voice catching her in the act of conspiring to destroy her own granddaughter. I looked at my father. He had slumped back in his chair, looking suddenly old and frail. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the terrifying realization that he had backed the wrong horse. And I looked at Tiffany. She was shaking her hands, clawing at her neck brace as if it were suddenly choking her. "You recorded us!" she screeched, her voice hysterical. "You recorded us! That is illegal! You cannot do that! Actually," I said, my voice calm and cold as ice, "it is my car. It is my property. And in this state, I do not need your permission to record audio in my own vehicle." I walked over to the table and picked up the settlement agreement. I ripped it in half. And then I ripped it in half again. I tossed the pieces onto my father's plate right on top of his roast beef. "No deal," I said. "No money, no Mercedes." Tiffany lunged at me. Her hands were curled into claws, her face twisted into a mask of pure hate. "I will kill you!" she screamed. David stood up and grabbed her by the waist, holding her back. "Let me go!" She fought him, kicking and screaming. She ruined everything. "No, Tiffany," I said, standing my ground. "You ruined everything. I just turned the lights on." I looked at my parents. They were looking at me with fear. Genuine fear. "Sarah, please," my mother whispered, tears streaming down her face, real tears this time. "Please do not show this to anyone. We can fix this. We can work something out." "It is too late, Mom," I said. I looked at the clock on the wall. "Because I already sent the link," I said. "Link to who?" my father asked hoarsely. "To the police," I said, "and to the insurance company, and to the district attorney." As if on cue, the blue and red lights flashed through the front window, bathing the dining room in a chaotic strobe. The siren wailed outside, close and loud. "They are here," I said. Tiffany stopped screaming. She looked at the window. She looked at me. And then she looked at the door as the heavy pounding of a police baton echoed through the house. "Open up, Sheriff's Department." I smiled. "I think that is for you," I said. I held the heavy silver pen, hovering just millimeters above the signature line. The paper beneath my hand felt thick and expensive, a stark contrast to the cheap lies it contained. My mother Linda leaned forward, her eyes hungry, fixed on the tip of the pen, as if she could will the ink to flow by sheer force of greed. My father Gary let out a long exhale, his shoulders dropping as he believed the crisis was finally averted. Tiffany swirled her wine with her good hand, a smug, satisfied smile playing on her lips. They thought they had won. They thought they had broken me. I looked at Maya. She was sitting perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, but her eyes were locked on mine. She knew. I had told her to trust me, and now in her gaze I saw a flicker of anticipation. I set the pen down on the table with a deliberate, audible click. The sound was small, but in the quiet dining room, it sounded like a gunshot. "What is wrong, Sarah?" my mother asked, her voice sharpening instantly. "Why did you stop?" I pushed the chair back and stood up. "I am not ready to sign just yet," I said, my voice calm and conversational. "Before we finalize this agreement, before I hand over $50,000 and destroy my daughter's reputation, I think we should take a moment to reflect." Reflect on what Tiffany snapped, irritation flashing across her face. "We have been over this. Just sign the check, Sarah. I need to go home and rest my neck." I ignored her. I walked over to the sideboard where the remote control for the 85-inch television lay waiting. I picked it up, feeling the weight of it in my hand. It was not just a remote. It was the detonator. "Actually," I said, turning to face them, "I have something I want to show you first. Think of it as a souvenir, a little memento of the night our family changed forever." My father frowned. "Sarah, sit down. We do not have time for games." "This isn't a game, Dad," I said. "It is a screening." I pointed the remote at the massive screen mounted on the wall behind them. I pressed the power button. The screen flared to life, bathing the dining room in a cool, high-definition glow. The surround sound system, which my husband had installed years ago, hummed with power. I had connected my laptop earlier, queuing up the file, so there would be no fumbling, no loading screens, just immediate, devastating clarity. The video began. It was not the footage of the crash. Not yet. I started earlier. The screen showed the interior of my garage bathed in the eerie green glow of the dashcam's night vision. The timestamp in the corner read 9:42 p.m. The garage door opened and Tiffany walked in. The room went deadly silent. On the screen, Tiffany was not wearing the neck brace she wore now. She was not limping. She was strutting. She was wearing a tight sequined dress that caught the light, looking nothing like the victim she was pretending to be. In her hand, she twirled a set of keys. "My keys." "Gotcha," she whispered to the empty garage, her voice crisp and clear through the speakers. I watched my family out of the corner of my eye. Tiffany's mouth fell open. She lowered her wine glass, her hand trembling so hard the red liquid sloshed over the rim, staining the white tablecloth. My mother squinted at the screen, confused at first, then slowly realizing what she was seeing. The video cut to the next clip. The interior of the car. The lighting was better now, illuminated by the dashboard and the streetlights outside. Tiffany was driving, but she was not just driving. She was performing. She held a bottle of Grey Goose vodka between her knees. With one hand on the wheel, she unscrewed the cap and took a long, deep pull. She wiped her mouth and laughed, staring not at the road, but at her phone, which was mounted on the dash, recording a live stream. "Hey everyone," she shouted over the thumping bass of the car stereo. "Welcome to the late night show. We are taking the niece's whip for a spin. She does not deserve this thing anyway. Spoiled brat." I turned the volume up. Tiffany's voice filled the dining room, loud and slurry and hateful. In the dining room, the real Tiffany let out a strangled sound. "That is not—" "Sarah, turn it off." I did not turn it off. The video continued. We watched her weave through traffic. We watched her read comments on her phone while doing 60 in a 40 zone. We watched her drink more vodka. My father stood up, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. "Sarah, this is enough. Turn it off now." "Sit down, Dad," I said, my voice cutting through the air like a whip. "We are just getting to the best part." On the screen, the inevitable happened. The car swerved. The tires screeched a horrible tearing sound that made Maya flinch in her chair. The camera spun violently. The world turned into a blur of motion, and then came the impact. Crunch. The sound of $48,000 of steel wrapping around an oak tree was visceral. It shook the floorboards. The airbags deployed with a violent pop, filling the cabin with dust. Then silence. In the dining room, nobody breathed. My mother had her hands over her mouth. David was staring at the screen, his eyes wide and wet with tears of rage. On the screen, Tiffany groaned. She pushed the airbag away. She checked her face in the rearview mirror. She did not check the car. She did not check for bystanders. She reached for her phone. She did not dial 911. She dialed Mom. I looked at my mother. Linda was frozen. She was staring at the screen with the look of a deer moments before impact. She knew what was coming. She remembered the call. The audio from the car's Bluetooth system picked up the ringing tone. Then my mother's voice answered, sleepy but clear. "Hello?" Mom, Tiffany sobbed on the video. "Mom, I crashed. I crashed Sarah's car. I am drunk. I am going to jail. It is my third strike." I watched the color drain from my mother's face. It started at her chin and went all the way up to her hairline, leaving her looking like a wax figure. She gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned blue. And then came the instructions. The voice from the speakers was undeniably Linda's. It was authoritative. It was cold. "Do not call the police, Tiffany. Go wake Maya up. Get her outside." My father turned to look at his wife. He looked at her as if he had never seen her before. "Linda," he whispered. "Linda, tell me that isn't you." Linda did not answer. She could not. The evidence was booming through the house. "She is a minor, Tiffany. They will seal the record. Blame her. Tell them she stole the keys. Sarah will pay for it. She always pays." The video ended. The screen went black, leaving us in the sudden heavy silence of the dining room. I looked at them. Really looked at them. My mother was shaking her head slowly, muttering, "No, no, no," under her breath. My father had collapsed back into his chair, looking deflated and old. And Tiffany. Tiffany was staring at me with a hatred so pure it was almost impressive. The mask of the victim had shattered completely. She was not hurt. She was cornered. "You witch!" she hissed, standing up and knocking her chair backward. "You recorded us, you illegal little witch!" She lunged. It happened fast. She grabbed the heavy crystal wine decanter from the center of the table and raised it, her eyes wild. She was going to throw it. She was going to throw it at the TV, or maybe at me. David moved faster. He shot out of his chair and intercepted her. He grabbed her wrist in midair, twisting it until she dropped the decanter. It hit the table with a thud, splashing red wine across the settlement papers, soaking the lies in crimson. David pulled her back, pinning her arms to her sides. He was not gentle. "Stop it!" he roared, his voice shaking the walls. "Just stop it, Tiffany! It is over! Let me go!" she screamed, thrashing against him. "She ruined everything! She set us up!" "No," David said, tightening his grip. "You did this. You ruined us." He looked at me over her struggling shoulder. His eyes were full of apology and pain. He looked at the dashcam footage playing on loop in his mind, and then he looked at his wife, and I saw the moment his marriage died. I stood there calmly, holding the remote like a weapon. "I am not signing your papers, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "I am not paying your bills, Dad. And Tiffany, I am not buying you a Mercedes." Linda looked up at me, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "Sarah, please. We can explain. We were just trying to protect the family." "No," I said. "You were trying to protect Tiffany. You were willing to send Maya to prison to do it. You were willing to let her carry a felony record for the rest of her life so your golden child wouldn't have to face the consequences of her third DUI. That is not protection, Mom. That is a sacrifice. And Maya is not yours to sacrifice." Gary put his head in his hands. "We are ruined," he whispered. "If this gets out—" "Oh, it is out," I said. I pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up. "I sent the link to the cloud server. 10 minutes ago," I said. "I sent it to the insurance adjuster, Mark. I sent it to the district attorney's office. And I sent it to the sheriff's deputy who arrested Maya." Tiffany stopped struggling. She went limp in David's arms. "You did what she whispered." I smiled. And it wasn't a nice smile. "I told you I would handle it." The red and blue lights pulsing through the front window were not a surprise to everyone in the room. They were an invitation I had sent hours ago. I watched the realization wash over my family as the heavy thud of boots on the porch steps echoed through the silent house. My father, Gary, looked at the front door with the expression of a man watching a tsunami approach, knowing there was no high ground left to run to. My mother, Linda, was still shaking her head, muttering denial under her breath, as if she could reject reality simply by refusing to acknowledge it. But Tiffany was the first to break. The fight drained out of her, leaving only a raw, terrified trembling. She looked at me, and for the first time in her life, she did not see a sister or a savior. She saw a wall. The front door swung open. It was not a polite knock. It was an entry. The sheriff, a man named Miller, who I had sat with earlier that afternoon reviewing digital evidence in his office, walked in. He was not alone. 3 deputies followed him, filling my entryway with uniforms and the jingle of equipment. They did not look like they were here for a social call. They looked like they were here to take out the trash. Miller looked around the room, his eyes landing on the shattered wine decanter and the stained settlement papers. He looked at David holding Tiffany back, and then he looked at me. I raised my wine glass in a silent toast. Sheriff Miller nodded once and turned to my sister. "Tiffany Miller, you are under arrest." Tiffany let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. For what, she shrieked. "I did not do anything. It was an accident. You are under arrest for driving under the influence, 3rd offense, driving with a suspended license, felony filing of a false police report, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor." The deputies moved in. David let go of her, stepping back with his hands raised, surrendering her to the law. Tiffany thrashed as they grabbed her arms. "No, no, no," she screamed. "Mom, help me. Daddy, do something. They cannot arrest me. I am injured. Look at my neck." They pulled her arms behind her back. She winced, but the fake neck brace did nothing to stop the click of the handcuffs. It was a sound I would remember for the rest of my life, the sound of consequences finally catching up. Sheriff Miller turned to my parents. "Linda and Gary Miller, please stand up and place your hands behind your backs." My father stood up slowly, his face gray. "You are making a mistake, Sheriff. We are the victims here. Our daughter was in an accident. We were just trying to handle a family matter privately." "There is nothing private about conspiring to frame a minor for a felony, sir," Miller said, his voice hard. "You are both under arrest for conspiracy to commit a crime, obstruction of justice, and filing a false report. We have the audio, Gary. We have your wife instructing your daughter to pin a crime on a 16-year-old girl. And we have your statements to my deputies at the scene corroborating that lie." My mother let out a wail that sounded like a wounded animal. "No, you cannot do this. We are upstanding citizens. We are good people. Sarah, tell them. Tell them this is a misunderstanding." She looked at me, her eyes pleading, desperate. "Sarah, please. Call your lawyer. Stop this." I took a slow sip of my wine. The vintage really was excellent. "I did call a lawyer, Mom," I said calmly. "I called him hours ago. He is the one who told me to call the sheriff." The deputies handcuffed my father. He did not fight, but he looked at me with a hatred that burned. "You are dead to me," he spat. "You are no daughter of mine." I watched as they cuffed my mother. She was hyperventilating, gasping for air, claiming she was having a heart attack, but the deputies had seen the video. They knew she was fine enough to plot the destruction of her granddaughter's life just 24 hours ago. Tiffany was being dragged toward the door. She dug her heels into my hardwood floor, screaming at the top of her lungs. "Mom made me do it. It was her idea. She told me to blame Maya." "I wanted to tell the truth, Sarah. I swear. It was Mom." I watched her throw her own mother under the bus without a second of hesitation. It was poetic in a way. The monster they created was now devouring them. I walked over to where they were being herded toward the door. I stood in front of them, blocking their exit for just a moment. The room smelled of expensive roast beef, spilled wine, and fear. "I am not the one who called the cops on a child." I said, my voice low and steady, so only they could hear. "I am not the one who tried to send my own flesh and blood to prison to save my reputation. You did that, all of you." I looked at Tiffany. "Enjoy the Mercedes," I said. "Oh, wait. You are not getting one. You are getting a cell." The deputies pushed them forward. I watched them go. I watched the flashing lights illuminate their shame as they were marched out of my house and into the back of the patrol cars. The neighbors were watching. I could see the curtains twitching across the street. Good. Let them see. Let everyone see. Before the last deputy took my father out the door, I stepped forward. "Wait," I said. The deputy paused, holding my father by the arm. Gary looked at me, hope flaring in his eyes for a brief second, thinking maybe I had cracked, thinking maybe I was going to write a check for bail or call a judge. I reached into the pocket of my dress. I did not pull out a checkbook. I pulled out a standard white legal envelope. It was sealed. I walked up to my father and tucked it into the breast pocket of his jacket. "What is this?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Is it money for a lawyer?" "No, Dad," I said. "It is not money. And it is not the $50,000 you wanted." I stepped back. "It is an eviction notice." He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing. "Eviction? What are you talking about? It is my house." "No," I said. "It is not. It never was. When I paid off your mortgage 5 years ago, I did not just pay it off. I bought the note. The deed is in my name, Dad. It has been in my name for 5 years. I let you live there rent-free because I thought you were family. I paid the property taxes. I paid the insurance. I paid for the new roof last year." I saw the realization hit him. He remembered the papers I had him sign, the ones he had not bothered to read because he was too busy celebrating his financial freedom. "You have 30 days, I said. "Legally, I have to give you 30 days, but honestly, I would start packing now. It is hard to find an apartment with a felony record and no credit score." "You cannot do this," my mother shrieked from the other side of the doorway where she was being held. "We will be homeless. Where will we go?" "I do not know, Mom," I said, shrugging. "Maybe you can go to Paris." "Oh, wait, you spent that money already, didn't you?" I turned to David, who was standing by the window watching the scene unfold with a grim expression. "David," I said, "do you have the other thing?" He nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a pair of scissors. He walked over to my father. The deputy tensed, but David moved slowly. He reached for my father's wallet, which was sticking out of his back pocket. "Hey!" my father shouted. "That is my wallet." David pulled out a black credit card. It was the supplementary card I had given them for emergencies, the one Tiffany had been using to fund her life. David held it up. Then he cut it in half. The snap of the plastic was satisfyingly loud. "Account closed," David said. He dropped the pieces on the floor. "And Gary, I am filing for divorce in the morning," David added, "so do not expect to crash on my couch." My father looked at the pieces of plastic on the floor, then at the eviction notice in his pocket, then at me. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. He looked like a man who had built a castle on sand and was finally watching the tide come in. "You are cruel," he whispered. "I learned from the best," I said. The deputy led him away. I closed the front door. The lock clicked shut with a sound of finality that echoed through the empty house. I turned around. Maya was standing in the doorway of the dining room. She had watched the whole thing. Her eyes were wide, but she was not crying anymore. She looked at me with a mixture of awe and relief. "Is it over?" she asked. I walked over to her and pulled her into a hug. I held her tighter than I had ever held anything in my life. "Yes, baby," I said. "It is over. They can never hurt you again." 6 months later, the sun was shining in a way that felt different. It felt cleaner. I stood in the showroom of the Volvo dealership, the smell of new leather and polished metal filling the air. It was a good smell, a safe smell. Maya was sitting in the driver's seat of a charcoal gray XC90. It was a tank of a car. 5 stars in every safety category. Side impact protection, collision avoidance. It was the safest car money could buy, and I bought it with cash. "Do you like it?" I asked, leaning through the window. She smiled. It was a real smile, not the shadowed, fearful look she had worn for weeks after the arrest. "I love it, Mom. It feels solid." "It is solid," I said. "Just like us." Things had changed. The fallout from that night had been nuclear, just as I intended. The video footage from the dashcam had somehow found its way onto the local community Facebook page. I never admitted to leaking it, but I also never deleted the anonymous email account I used to send it. The town had seen everything. They saw the drinking. They saw the crash. And most importantly, they heard the audio of a grandmother framing her grandchild. Socially, my parents were dead. Their friends at the country club stopped calling. The church asked them not to return. They were pariahs. They lost the house, just as I promised. They were currently living in a 1-bedroom subsidized apartment on the other side of town, living off Social Security and whatever odd jobs my father could find. I had blocked their numbers. I had blocked their emails. I had erased them from my life. Tiffany was currently serving year 1 of a 3-year sentence. The district attorney did not offer a plea deal. He had a teenage daughter too, and the video offended him personally. The judge had called her actions depraved during sentencing. She would be eligible for parole in 18 months, but with her felony record, her life as a golden child was over. She would never be able to hide who she was again. David had divorced her. He moved to a different city, started over, and sent me a Christmas card thanking me for saving him. He was a good man who had been caught in a bad web, and I wished him well. And Maya. The charges against her were dropped with prejudice the morning after the arrest. The district attorney had personally apologized to her. Her record was clean. She had finished her junior year with a 4.0 GPA and was already looking at colleges far away from here. She gripped the steering wheel of the Volvo. "Mom," she said, looking at me, "do you miss them?" I thought about it. I thought about the family dinners where I was ignored. I thought about the money I had poured into a black hole. I thought about the moment I realized they were willing to sacrifice her. "No," I said honestly, "I do not miss them. Not miss. I miss the idea of them. I miss who I wanted them to be, but I do not miss who they were." She nodded, understanding. "I am glad you are my mom," she said. "You are kind of scary, but I am glad." I laughed. I kissed her forehead. "Being scary is a job requirement when you are protecting the things you love," I said. We drove off the lot, leaving the past in the rearview mirror. I had lost a sister. I had lost 2 parents. I had lost a family. But as I looked at my daughter driving her safe, sturdy car into a future that was bright and open, I knew I had won the only thing that mattered. It was the best trade I had ever made. Lesson learned. This story serves as a brutal reminder that shared DNA is not a license for abuse. Sarah spent years buying her family's affection only to realize they viewed her merely as a financial resource, not a person. The ultimate lesson here is that boundaries are essential for survival. When toxic family members threaten the safety and future of your children, loyalty must end. We learn that being a good daughter should never come at the cost of being a protective mother. Sometimes cutting ties isn't an act of hate, but a necessary act of self-preservation and absolute justice. If you agree that Sarah made the right choice to protect her daughter, hit the like button and subscribe for more stories of justice served.